Last week, we untangled the math behind our property taxes. Homeowners watching this, you probably received a property reassessment. If you don't agree with the numbers on that paper, you do have recourse. Our friend, attorney Morris Ellison of Womble Bond Dickinson, helped us understand how to challenge it. On this Money Monday, he joins us again to talk about property taxes as they relate to retail, a badly hurt industry since the coronavirus shut the world down. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you as well, Leyla.
So are this year's taxes going to be a major hit on our small businesses?
Well, the taxes are definitely going up. Since we spoke last week, various local jurisdictions, including the town of Mount Pleasant, the city of Charleston, some others, have announced what they call their millage rates, which are their tax rates. And in the case of Mount Pleasant and the city of Charleston, those millage rates are going up. If you're compounding the problem from the standpoint of expenses going up with the values of the properties going up. So not only are the millage rates increasing, but the values are going up as a result of countywide reassessment. So the tax bills are going up. And when we're in an environment where a small business in particular is scrapping for every dollar that goes to property tax is another dollar that could be spent on other things or could keep the business in business. And it's a real struggle.
And let's talk about businesses staying in business because unfortunately, since COVID-19 hit, everybody had to shutter and the numbers are abysmal as to what we expect to close down permanently and what we're thinking may reopen. Can you give us some numbers, maybe not necessarily locally, but nationally?
Well, I can't give you local numbers, and a lot of it's anecdotal, but it looks like we're going to have more retail bankruptcies this year than ever before, and that includes retail bankruptcies coming out of the so-called Great Financial Crisis in 2008. You can name companies such as JCPenney or Brooks Brothers. National retailers are shuttering literally left and right. Some of the national statistics I have heard, and I can't verify this, is that the expectation is that perhaps as many as 25% of all small business in Manhattan, in New York, are never going to reopen. Hotels are going to take a huge hit, particularly in business hotels. Charleston is, thank God, a little bit more fortunate because most of it's not business travel, but the number of small businesses that are shuttering as a result of COVID-19 it's huge. It's something that has not occurred literally in the lifetime of anybody under the age of 90. I mean, this is as bad as the Great Depression, and it could get worse.
Oh, goodness.
And I know that's scary, but
yes, it is. You took the words out of my mouth. I mean, really, I thought, having lived through the Great Recession, that was going to be it for my lifetime. I don't know that I can live through another episode such as that, and to hear that our friends who have businesses that we've been supporting over these years are going away. I mean, it's heartbreaking.
It's awful. And I don't want to be a Cassandra. I don't want to just talk about bad things, but property taxes, rent, loans, all of this is interrelated. And so, for example, if you are a mom and pop business, let's relate it to property taxes for a moment. Charleston County is reassessing this year, and the property taxes are going up. Well, who's going to pay those property taxes? Frankly, at the end of the day, it's the consumer. It's all of us who is paying that, because the tenant, the mom and pop, which is usually the mom and pop business, usually if they don't own the property, and I'll circle back to that in just a moment, if they don't own the property, then they almost always have to pay the taxes that the landlord has received that reassessment notice, because the leases are usually what are called triple net leases, where the expenses are all passed on by the landlord to the tenant. And two of the biggest expenses that are not changing as a result of COVID that the mom and pop business, the retailer, has to pay are insurance and taxes. They're not going down as a result of COVID-19. Other operating expenses may well go down, but insurance and taxes are not. And it just puts tremendous pressure on the business to stay open. And one of the things that's going on, and again, this is anecdotal, I can't back it up with statistics right now, but the landlords also have their loans that they have to pay. It's not just the expenses of the small business, but the landlords have to pay their loans, and a lot of those loans are deferred for payment. It's what's called in forbearance, and many of the forbearance periods are going to end at the end of this year.
That's right.
And
And if I
we
could
haven't seen, I'm sorry?
I'm sorry. I just want to interject one quick thing, and then we do need to take a break, and we'll continue your thought
Sure.
after that. But one thing that I just want to point out is that when we're talking about property taxes, though, we'll get to loans in a second, but when we're talking about property taxes, that these were assessed back in December of 2018. So if we're thinking, oh, in the midst of coronavirus, your county said, we're going to raise your property taxes, it's time to do it. That's not true. They're basing it off of what life was like back in December 2018, and it was great. So now they're getting hit with a tax bill that's reflective of much better times. So I want to talk about more the loan that you were bringing up, the loans that are coming due. We're going to do that after the commercial. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back on this Money Monday. We've been joined by our friend Morris Ellison of Womble Bond Dickinson. And I just made a comment about when property taxes were being reassessed. You wanted to make a correction on that.
Yeah, not a correction, a clarification. The property taxes are changing this year. However, all of the reassessment notices in Charleston County are based on a valuation date. In other words, what the condition of the property was, like you said, in much better times, specifically December 31st, 2018. When we're fixing these valuations, by and large, for the next 5 years. Now, what's interesting about that is the law is not necessarily clear as to whether the value will stay the same for the next 5 years if somebody were to try to appeal it, for instance, in 2021 or 2022. However, there is a South Carolina Attorney General's opinion that was issued about 10 years ago that says that the values do stay the same for the next 5 years. Nobody's litigated that yet, but it's a question.
And it's best for small business owners to be well informed of what they may or may not be paying. So one thing that you said is that if a mom and pop store is not the owner of the property in which their business is located, that means that the property owner will receive the reassessment, and then that cost is pushed onto the owners of the store. However, they won't necessarily see the tax bill. So what do you recommend for people to do?
I recommend that the small business ask right now to see a copy of the reassessment notice, to see what's happened to the valuation. The tenant, the mom and pop business, may not have the ability to appeal it. Only the property owner has that ability. But if the mom and pop business indicates to the property owner, we're concerned about this, and this could have a real impact on our ability to pay you rent as well as service our customers, it's going to get the landlord's attention. And then I think the landlord has to look much more closely at it. There are numerous instances that I have had some exposure to in the last several weeks, really, where the landlords just aren't paying attention to this because, oh, it's just a pass-through cost. I'll just give it to the tenant with the expectation that they'll pay it. That's not in their best interest either, because that's increasing the cost for a tenant who's may well be struggling mightily. But if I'm the mom and pop business, I ask to see a copy of that reassessment notice.
So what do you think everybody's going to do? I mean, it would only help if everybody worked together on this. So you receive the reassessment. What should you do? Both the tenant and the property owner?
Ultimately, the decision is the property owners to make. And to make that determination as to whether it's cost effective, like we talked about last week in the residential context, whether it's cost effective for the property owner to appeal the taxes. Property owners should want, and in my experience, does want the taxes to be lower because that reduces the cost to the property owner's tenant. And God forbid the tenant has to leave, it makes the cost to the next tenant lower. Because just because the tenants change doesn't mean the property taxes are going to change.
True. That is true. Now, you were starting to bring up about loans coming due, and those are going to be coming due because the deferment period is ending. The forbearance period is ending.
In the last 6 months, there has been a lot of loans that have been restructured in order to defer payments. And that's true across the board. It's true for the mom and pop business. It's true for the landlords as well. In many instances, the forbearance period, which is the time period when payments don't have to be made or they're made at a reduced rate, that period runs till the end of the year. And after the first of the year, January 1st, 2021, if the forbearance period is up, then a lot of these issues are going to come to the fore. They're going to be front and center, because then whoever owes the money on the loan has got to look at it, and the lenders are going to be having to look at it as well. So we're in a time period right now where I don't think the full impact of COVID-19 has been felt throughout the economy when it comes to the retail economy, although it's been pretty dramatic. But when those forbearance periods come up, then we're going to see it even more.
All right, Morris, I want to thank you again for joining us. You've given us a lot of food for thought. It's a complicated world out there, and my goodness, anything we can do to help support our small businesses, we're going to try to do that. Thank you for joining us.
Sure, happy to.
We're back after this.